stressing and emphasizing the role that each of us may play to guarantee and promote plant health by acting on treatment, but also prevention on any level. So the presentations included in the agenda will dwell on the targets of the international year that could be summarized as follows. The first goal, which is also today's goal, is to raise awareness among the public on the importance of plant health. We want to keep plants healthy. We did so by also involving the educational system and the training system on a local level. Another target is to highlight the effects of plant health on food security and safety and on the various functions of the ecosystems. There's also an important role in protecting best practices for protecting plant health by also protecting the environment, therefore leveraging technical skills and their close relationship to communication. We will also focus on the importance of managing pests introduced in new areas also as a result of globalization, and how governments through public services, for instance phytosanitary services, can play a role involving also the farmers and all stakeholders in the food chain. We can all adopt effective choices to guarantee food production and quality of products, for instance by implementing integrated management system for managing pests and the most advanced forms of smart fight against pests. We will also talk about strategies to safeguard the vegetable products to make sure that they're free of diseases and parasites and pests, and therefore sponsoring commerce and trade, allowing also developing countries. This is also connected with the strengthening of the regulatory framework, so the sanitary standards, which is also connected to the issue of the guarantees that the states have to implement to guarantee protection measures, to sponsor research and innovative technologies. Today we will have a number of international and national outstanding speakers whom I wish to thank. We're honored to have you here with us. They represent international and national organizations and institutions, and most especially, I already mentioned the FEO, the European Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization, and the IPPC, the International Plant Protection Convention. We will have a representative of the Ministry of Agriculture, as I said before, but we will also hear from major stakeholders in the Lombardy region, from local communities in our region, like representatives of major universities in Lombardy, the representatives of academies, a representative of the environmental protection agencies. They will provide a summary view of their own realities. And also we will hear from the representatives of the regional educational office, school office, which will help us implement the school project. Around the table, we also have Professor Mancuso. Class in this conference, providing some food for thought for all of us. Let me remind you that the FAO, but someone else more authoritative than myself, we reiterate this. IPPC provides reference standards guiding the activities relating to plant health throughout 2020. So the agenda is very dense. I'll try to stick to the timetable. The conference was to be opened by the Regional Council for Agriculture. He cannot be here because there is an urgency meeting this morning, so he will not be able to be here for the opening. Probably he will be with us for the conclusions of today's meeting. So I am your host. The manager of the regional body ERSAF for agriculture and forestry will deliver the opening speech to provide an introduction. So she will read Mr. Orfe's presentation.
Grazie, buongiorno. Thank you very much indeed. Good morning. It's a great honor to replace the councillor. I would like to extend the greetings of ERSAF, Mr. Feloni, the chairman who is following us in streaming. All too often we forget that plants produce 98% of the oxygen we breathe in. They account for 80% of the food we eat. Nevertheless, we underrate the importance of their health. In forests, plants act as a reservoir for carbon. They nourish thousands of living beings. They are natural waterways, hosting 80% of biodiversity on the earth. In our cities, plants and trees reduce the air temperature, thus contributing to mitigating air pollution. They increase and enhance the value of poverty, enhance biodiversity, and improve physical and mental health. The FAO estimates that every year about 40% of production for a value of $220 billion is lost due to parasites and pests affecting plants. The consequence of that is that millions of people don't get access to sufficient food, and farming in poor communities is suffering because of that. Final consolidation on the global market of emerging production areas, which used to be separated by geographical barriers, faster transportation, reduction of customs barriers, international tourism, and manufacturing outsourcing have all entailed a sharp increase in flows of people and goods at international level, and they have promoted the spreading of pests at global level, with a strong impact on the health of plants worldwide, thus creating phytosanitary emergencies. Protecting plants against pests and parasites, therefore, is a long-term investment for protecting our plant assets. Our region, Lombardy, is very keen on protection of plant health, which are a source of income, but they are also a very valuable asset and a crucial component in our cities. I would like to remind you some figures about regional farming. The agri-food system in Lombardy is the first important one in Italy. Lombardy, over the years, has confirmed to be the first farming region in Italy, with 50,000 farming companies producing 37% of the Italian milk, 42% of the Italian rice, 40% of swine products. And it's also the largest farming surface, where the activities cover 69% of the regional territory. With a relatively reduced number of companies and a long-established farming tradition, and thanks to technological development, it produces 13.5% of the farming produces and assets which are mainly processed. High-standing production account for a large share in Italy. 34% produces with controlled origin, and in winemaking we have 42 wines with a quality certificate. If we look at the local level, more than 8% of the farming surface in Lombardy is devoted to high-quality crops. In 2018, the value of agri-food production has exceeded 13.5 billion euro. The progressive internationalization of the regional agri-food system over the last 3 years has allowed to increase export, reaching almost 50% of the agri-food production. Productivity of farming is measured in the ratio between added value from farming and relative number of operators, 74,000 euro, which is in absolute term twice as much as the national average. The agri-food sector has an irreplaceable role in the region, also when it comes to protection and improvement of the regional territory. From an environmental point of view, farming in Lombardy has got distinctive features which deserve protection. 900 alpine farmings with 30,000 cows and 80,000 sheep, 20 regional forests, and water channels for farming, which also constitute a great reservoir hosting plenty of biodiversity. These are just some figures showing that attention to plant health needs to be a priority in our region. Protection of plant health requires direct actions against pests which are already present in the territory, such as Anoplophora and Papilla. We need to protect our nursery gardens and our forests since 2008. Because of Anoplophora, we have invested more than 20 million euro, and we had to cut trees because they were infested by this parasite. There is evidence of how non-regulated pests, such as Anoplophora, such as, for instance, also Asian longhorned beetle, can infest our crops. And they have been an object of emergency actions, fighting strategies, and economic supports to farmers. Great attention is devoted to actions in the near future, most of all looking at production with the threat of Spodoptera frugiperda, fall armyworm, which is harming maize crops. And in Lombardy, it could harm the food supply chain and the milk supply chain, which is really the first source of income at regional level in farming. Same attention is devoted to nursery gardens, also for flower growing. In a network where there are close relationships, we need to accompany the activities also in the field of import and export of farming assets, considering the central value of plant health. Besides the initiatives which will be presented later this morning, we have analyzed the strategic role of the regional phytosanitary service within the context of the reorganization of the national phytosanitary sector. We have decided to strengthen it, and this is the reason why there is an in-depth restructuring of the service. From January the 1st, 2021, all functions will be merged under the General Directorate for Farming. And recently we have also hired 20 new agronomists to strengthen the staff of our department. Farming contributes to a central function, i.e. providing food, feeding human beings. Sustainability challenges posed to society relate to food safety and food security. In a perspective of intergenerational and intragenerational sustainable development, we need to look at plant protection, spreading awareness of the fact that we are all accountable for plant health. Institutions first, then operators who need to protect their own plants and production in a conscious, sustainable manner. And also all citizens who need to gain awareness of the important role of plants and of the need to protect them and of the interconnected complexity. And they also need to gain awareness about how to do it. The school project that we are launching here has the target of tackling these issues, starting from younger students in schools, promoting knowledge with a scientific approach. Thank you very much indeed. I would like to thank Francesca Ossola, who has read out the contribution of the councillor who is on the forefront when it comes to containment of pests. She is directing the activities and the operations of the Regional Phytosanitary Service. Now there is a video clip, an official video.
Stavo dicendo che dovrebbe esserci un video che parte ed è partito.
There is a video that started before my introduction. It will not be translated as requested.
Io sono vita. Sono la casa di molti. E nutro milioni. La mia abbondanza è prosperità. Ma la mia carenza può essere fatale. Copro gran parte della terra e il mio influsso arriva ben oltre. Esisto da molto più di quanto immaginiate, ma il mio mondo è in pericolo. Dobbiamo riconoscerlo e mettere più impegno per assicurare il mio futuro. Perché io merito protezione. Dalla mia salute dipende la vostra. La vostra vita dipende dalla mia. Io sono le piante. Io sono la vita.
Bene, dopo questo video.
Very well, after this introductory video, there is a lot of material that has been produced and that you can find on the FAO and EPPC websites. Now, we should have Mr. Bruno Faraglia online from the ministry. Please confirm if so. He's the manager, the director of the phytosanitary department of the Minister for Agriculture and Forestry from the General Directorate of Rural Development. Bruno, can you hear me? No, there's just noise in the background.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's really pleasure for me to take part to this event, so important for our activities. We are listen the video. Our health depend on their health. Our life depend on their life. This is a very important concept, and I think will be the underlying motive for our work. The 2020, like International Year for Plant Health, is an initiative with enormous significance, especially at the time like the one we are experiencing, in which the protection of the plant world is a great risk. Now, as never before, it's necessary and urgent to raise global awareness on how protecting plant health can help end hunger, reduce poverty, protect the environment, and promote economic development. The climate change and human activity are altering ecosystems, reduce biodiversity, and creating conditions in which parasites can always thrive more easily. At the same time, international travel and trade has intensified in recent decades, through which pests and disease can be rapidly spread around the world, causing severe damage to native plant, the environment, the economy and social structure, and entire territories. Just think to how many and with what repercussion our territory is called to face a phytosanitary emergency. There are over 20 of them across our country. Among the best known, Xylella fastidiosa in Puglia and Asian bug in northeast Italy. Implementing measures to protect plants from harmful parasites is much cheaper than managing plant health emergency. Once established, plant pathogens and disease are often difficult to eradicate, and their management require huge investment in time and money. For this reason, through this important project, we are all called, not only in 2020, but also in future years, to make our contribution to raise awareness of the problem related to the plant world and guarantee the protection of our health and that of the planet, so that the international community recognize the importance of the plant world and its protection. Now, we listened to the number that put in evidence the importance of the plant and the recognitions of National Plant Protection Organization to achieve the protection. So at the European level, as you know, 2 new regulations have been adopted on protection measure, 2021 regulation, and for the officer control, with the objective to combating the entry and spread of harmful parasites to plant health and protecting plant protection, forest heritage, plant area, natural ecosystem and biodiversity in the Union. This regulation maintains the general architecture that we know for the European regime, but improve and require professionality of the operator that have a great responsibility, and require a better organization of the structure of the NPPO. In Italy, to achieve this challenge and ensure the full application of the change introduced by the aforementioned regulations, a process of reorganization of the national legislation is going on, with a legal basis in a specific delegation to the government. The current organization of the National Phytosanitary Service, established by the legislative decree in 2005, the number of degrees is 214, although sustainable its articulation into the Central Phytosanitary Service and the Regional Phytosanitary Service, does not respond adequately to the current needs for immediate intervention in the event of a phytosanitary emergency. In Italy, the regional reality are yet still extremely diversified, both for structure and for the allocation of human and technical resources, and alongside well-structured regional service equipped with laboratory and often in relationship with the university institution, there are other services that show very serious shortcomings. Even the system of import control is characterized by an extremely diversified structure of natural entry point, which make their rationalization necessary, with a reduction to only sustainable structure and greater uniformity of the procedure for carrying out check and behaviors. Through constant and homogeneous updating of phytosanitary inspector through national courses. This dysfunction in the National Phytosanitary Service translates into over 20 phytosanitary emergencies currently present in our territory. In light of the profound transformation required, the National Phytosanitary Committee has prepared a complete revision of the legislative decree 214 by preparing a draft legislation which, through 64 articles, has redefined every aspect of the National Phytosanitary Service. So just to give an idea about this complex goal, there are a new rule of National Phytosanitary Committee that need to take a decision at the national level. There is a specific institute of reference at the national level to support scientifically the activity of the NPPO. It's necessary to imagine, and we are put in the new legislation, a new management of phytosanitary emergency to have the power to and the velocity to intervene on the emergency. Establish a central secretariat for the phytosanitary emergency. It's another very big goal to manage our territory. There are other activity to support the reorganization, the training permanently for the inspector, the homogeneous procedure for the control. There is the necessity to develop a new informatic system to manage all information about phytosanitary matter. So the application of aforementioned regulation, which entailed the complete reorganization of the National Phytosanitary Service. And these activity are developing, and we hope to obtain the new National Phytosanitary Service in the beginning of the next year. So now I stop my contribution, and I wish everyone a good continuation of the work. Thank you.
Bene. Grazie al dottor.
Thank you, Mr. Faraglia. He is in charge of the National MPPO, and so He's committed to a far-reaching reorganization of the national service to make it compliant with the new stringent requirements of the phytosanitary framework of the European Union, which is based on international standards, of course. It tries to capture, as he said, the new emergencies and the new situation, which requires a bigger effort also on the part of the member states. I don't know if you noticed, but Bruno has Bessie the Bug on his desk. He's the mascot of this initiative. Bessie the Bug is the mascot, and we also have it on our table. We will tell you the official name that apparently he or she will be given. Very well. Now, the agenda includes the presentation of Mr. Shah. He's the director of the Plant Production and Protection Division of the FAO. Before this role, he was secretary of IPPC in Rome at the central office, at the headquarters in Rome. Before working for the FAO, he was permanent representative and plenipotentiary minister of China at the UN FAO. Between 2001 and 2011, he was also Director General and professor at the National Center for Agro-Technical Services of the Ministry of Agriculture of Beijing. So we are very honored to have him here.
To the conference. So I give you the floor for your speaking. Please.
I think you need to unmute.
Okay, now okay? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Chair, and the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to participate in this conference organized by Facilitation Service of Lombardia region as the occasion of International Year of Plant Health, IYPH 2020. Take this opportunity, I would like to express my great thanks to the National Plant Protection Organization of Italy and the Regional Facilitation Service for organizing this important event. I want to especially express my thanks to Mrs. Marigiana Ciampiti, who is a member of the Standing Committee of IPPC, and for her active engagement in contributing IPPC's mission of protecting the world plant resource from pest. I fully agree with the chair and Brownie opening remark. He's make a very good and a great statement. What I make summarize, this COVID-19 gives us a lot of lesson to learn. But two very important lessons, in fact, stated by Bruno. The first one, people health should be centralized. However, to ensure people health, plant health play a fundamental role to ensure people health. And the second one, about prevention is far more important than cure. This means we should pay more attention for prevention in some crises. Now, all these two issue implication affiliated for plant health, people health, and plant health. So this is the main important reason for us to celebration of International Year of Plant Health. As our chairperson mentioned, the major objective of celebration International Year of Plant Health is raising awareness of importance of plant health to a contribution to UN SDG for 2030 at global, regional, and the national level. So this is a very important objective for IFIPH. And the IFIPH was initialized by Finnish government here in the European region. And we have 5 years very hard working for preparation. So this year is the whole year for celebration. We designated 5 categories of activity. At the global level, we are going to organize and the CPM ministerial segment and organize the first international conference for plant health will be take place in Helsinki. And on the regional level, a lot of activity. I'm sure Nico Hong is here, who will may present you about what is going on in April. And the country level, in the national level, all the country now is very active, engaged for organized activity. And for example, we have 3 countries mint the coin for souvenir: Italy, and Belgium, and Mexico. I think around 20 countries maybe, and have souvenir stamp for IFIPH. Anyway, Mirko is here, and he will brief you this detail. This means for IFIPH, we have global, regional, national activity. Even impacted by COVID-19, everything still going on, though a little delayed or postponed. And some of them will have to be cancelled. But however, everything is going on because this is a once-a-lifetime opportunity for our generation to make a celebration. So what is our output? I want to emphasize. And we expected output for IFIPH. I think a major we have 4 output. The first output is to promote sharing all the knowledge about plant health at the global, regional, and the national level. The second one, we promote recognition of importance of plant health by citizens, particularly when the people traveling. They should realize there may be a risk. You carry something, pathogen, passed with you. So they should be very strict or follow quarantine measures. Number 3, we should have a sustainable, we get sustainable support of plant health for promote development of standard and implementation. Lastly, is most importantly, we try to establish International Day of Plant Health. So luckily, and now already, this International Day of Plant Health was proposed by Zambia government. Of course, it's mainly, is really supported by RAF. RAF is here. And now already decided and proposed every year later on, from May 12 will be International Day of Plant Health. This initiative already approved by FAO and the COAG meeting. And later on will be FAO Council and then conference. And by the end of next year, 2021, maybe UN General Assembly can approve it. So this means start from 2022, we can celebrate every year and then the International Day of Plant Health in May 12. So this is the 4 major output To reach this goal or output, now I think we have 4 expectations. The first one, the government should play an important role in supporting plant health, in supporting setting phytosanitary standard and the implementation of this standard. Farmer and the agribusiness operator should focus on implement of ISPM phytosanitary standard and also environmentally friendly pest management strategy. Number 3, our private sector should play an important role to drive in the innovation of plant health and also to promote and phytosanitary issue. And lastly, academia should work together to provide very good research tool and also research result to promote plant health. I think this is the whole idea about celebration of International Year of Plant Health. I thank you very much for this invitation, and I hope you everybody please use this once a lifetime opportunity. Try your very best to organize every kind of activity to celebrate IVIPH. And lastly, but not leastly, and wish you have a very successful and fruitful conference. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Grazie, Mr. Shah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shah. Thank you very much, especially for referring to prevention. Healthy plants go hand in hand with healthy people, as you correctly stated. And then thank you for reassuring us about the fact that the activities will be carried out despite the difficulties. The International Year celebrations are repeated over and over again every year is good news. But thank you also for reminding us that we have the responsibility of raising awareness among people who may not be experts in this field, but they still need to learn the importance and their key role in protecting plants. Using correct behaviors. We will talk about the non-risk campaign and knowing topics from a rational and scientific standpoint, how important it is. And also thank you for highlighting the role of institutions and governments for developing standards, especially at the top level.
A questo punto
Mr. Shah mentioned him, so we're following up to his reference. So Mr. Mirko Montori will now take the floor. He's an expert in partnership and communication with 15 years of international experience, 8 of which at the FAO. He has an academic background in international relations, diplomacy, public management, and communication. He's now project manager at IPPC. And he's especially in charge of implementing IPPC communications and partnership strategies. I will now hand over.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to the. Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you to the Phytosanitary Service of the Lombardy region and also the Italian National Plant Protection Organization for their kind invitation to this important event. We're very pleased to see how activities in Italy are rolling up with over 200 events taking place in different regions. So I think this is a good sign of the engagement of Italian authorities into celebrating the International Year of Plant Health. So thank you for that. I do have a few slides that I would like to introduce to you. So those could be started. Now, my intervention today will focus on three key issues. First of all, I'll introduce briefly on the concept of and importance of the impact of plant pests and diseases at the global level. I will then touch upon the role of the International Plant Protection Convention to tackle these issues. And finally, I will mention the ongoing activities at the global level for the International Year of Plant Health. Next, please. Now, this is the operating environment we find ourselves in, the UN 2030 agenda. Back in 2015, the UN member states and also a series of stakeholders at the global level decided to have to engage in achieving certain goals, 17 of them in particular, in order to sustain life on Earth and have an ambitious agenda for the following 15 years. We're now in 2020, and we're trying to get into the further implementation phase of these SDGs. I highlighted here some of them that are the direct responsibility of FAO as an organization. So you can see here how SDG 2 on zero hunger reflects actually the mission of FAO. But also if you click on the next bubbles, you will see how the work of FAO and the IPPC actually do contribute to a series of other SDGs which are relevant for example, sustainable consumption and production, SDG 12, but also climate action, SDG 13, and finally, life on land, which is the SDG relating to biodiversity conservation, which is SDG 15. Naturally, all of these ambitious goals can only be attained by working together collaboratively at all levels, and hence the importance of SDG 17. Now, if you click on the next slide, I would like to introduce some statistics and numbers that tell us about a bit the impact that plant pests and diseases have at the global level. So FAO estimates, as it has been recalled by the Italian MPPO, that around 20 to 40% of cultivated crops are lost annually due to plant pests and diseases. And this results in annual global losses of approximately $220 billion US. So hence you can see the impact that this has on global food security. The second point that I would like to highlight relates to the impacts of climate change. Now, FAO and the IPPC are currently conducting a study at the global level on the impacts of climate change on plant health. What we have been observing over the past years is that more and different pest varieties are becoming established and are present earlier in the year, and also they are introduced to new areas, which obviously has an effect or impact on plant health. One other important factor relates to biodiversity. According to the Global Outlook of IPBES, which is the technical organization dealing with biodiversity-related matters, plant pests and diseases as invasive alien species are considered as one of the 5 key factors for biodiversity loss. Now, when it comes to pests and diseases, the average person may have listened to or to news or read about some of the key pests and diseases in their area. But at the global level, I would like to just make 4 examples that are just illustrative of the work that the FAO is doing in order to tackle these challenges. So first of all, I presented here 2 pests and 2 diseases. So the first one being Spodoptera frugiperda, or fall armyworm in the English common name, which is basically a transboundary insect which has a very high potential for rapid spread, and which is native to the Americas, but it has actually spread throughout the entire Africa, Asia, and now Southwest Pacific. And so this is a very, very destructive pest of various hosts, particularly maize. And you may know that maize production in certain countries in Africa even dropped by 50% due to the impacts of this pest. So something that the FAO is working on very much, and I'm sure we will hear more about it in the next interventions. The second example is Rhynchophorus ferrugineus, which is also known as red palm weevil, which might be known to the public in Italy because of the impacts it has had on palm trees across the Mediterranean coast, including Italy. So this is, again, an insect, a very invasive insect pest, which was originally found in the Gulf region in the 80s and then has spread afterwards throughout the Mediterranean basin, and it's currently present in over 60 countries with very negative effects, especially on palm trees. Actually, 100 million of palm trees have been affected by this pest. And finally, I wish to present 2 examples of diseases. The first one is a bacterium, which also has been mentioned by the Italian MPPO, which is Xylella fastidiosa, which might be known as well by the wider Italian public because of its presence in the Apulia, in part of the Apulia region in Italy. This is again an emerging disease somehow, which was mainly present in America, but then has spread throughout again the Mediterranean and Iran, and it's attacking over 300 plant species, but among their hosts are certainly the olive tree, which also has implications again on food production and also kind of important cultural heritage that is being somehow affected by the introduction of this pest. And finally, I would like to introduce briefly the Fusarium disease, which has actually been a major limitation on banana production for over a century. This is affecting specifically and very much the production of bananas across different areas of the world. Now, its most recent variety, the tropical race 4, has actually caused recently some severe losses across different regions in the world, including Southeast Asia, and it's now spreading also to Latin America and the Caribbean. So there are a number of measures in place to countering such invasion. Now, if we select the next slide, we may see how the causes for such an increase somehow of the incidence of pests and diseases is due to 2 main factors. One is climate change related. Again, climate change does have an impact on a series of factors, including the pest life cycle, its distribution, and impacts, for example, on plants, but also anthropic activities. So all activities generated by people, which include international trade and movement of people, such as tourism. So if we move to the next, please. I would like to now introduce the second topic of my intervention, which is the relevance and importance in all this discourse on plant health of the International Plant Protection Convention, or IPPC in its English acronym. So what is the mission of this treaty? Well, first of all, this is a convention signed in 1951 and ratified in 1952. So it's one of the oldest conventions in existence relating to food and agriculture, and in particular has the mission to protect the global plant resources from pests while facilitating safe trade. So the IPPC is one of the 3 sisters, so-called sisters, recognized by the World Trade Organization's SPS agreement. and as such is one of the normative bodies, so standard setting organizations, recognized at the global level in the field of plant health. So it has a key regulatory function of all that relates plant health globally. The IPPC has currently 184 contracting parties, so it actually covers also almost the entire globe, and is working together very closely with 10 regional plant protection organizations. One of them is hereby represented by Mr. Nico Horn of the EPO, and also with over 40 international organizations. So this wide network is there to show the relevance of the organization, but also the way that we work with a number of different partners. Now, when it comes to the IPPC, I think one of the guiding documents that will somehow shape the work on plant health over the next decade is the IPPC Strategic Framework 2020-2030. This actually focuses on three key objectives. The first one relating to food security and sustainable agriculture production. The second one dealing with the protection of forests and environment, including biodiversity. And third, the need to facilitate safe trade. So the need to balance the need for trade of plants and plant products while protecting countries from the introduction of dangerous pests and diseases. Obviously, the new strategic framework is very much linked with the SDGs that I mentioned in the beginning, and it includes 8 development agendas that somehow are the strategic direction of the plant health community for the next 10 years. Next, please. Now, among the IPPC core activities are especially 4. One is what I mentioned, the standard setting activity. We have over 100 standards at the global level, which include diagnostic protocols and phytosanitary treatments that need to basically provide harmonized guidance to countries on how to implement the convention and how to set measures that can counter the introduction and spread of pests, while also providing guidance to organizations like the phytosanitary services to establish themselves and operate in the most appropriate and harmonized way. One example that I reported here of this activity is ISPM 15, which is the standard on the international movement of wood packaging material. You may notice that every wooden pallet that is to be traded internationally does have an IPPC mark on it, and this is the direct result of the application or implementation of this IPPC standard that describes the phytosanitary measures needed in order to reduce and minimize the risk of the wooden material actually carrying pests with them. The second key activity of the IPPC is implementation. So in this regard, of course, once adopted, standards and the convention need to be implemented. So the IPPC Secretariat is working again with partners in order to support the implementation of the convention and its standards in many countries. And one specific highlight that I wanted to mention here is the one tool that is the phytosanitary capacity evaluation tool that is applied widely by a number of countries to support the improvement of the phytosanitary services. Another key activity is trade facilitation, and particularly the IPPC ePhyto solution, which is the direct result of the implementation of one of the IPPC standards, ISPM 12, and basically serves to facilitate and speed up the process of trade across countries of plants and plant products with the implementation of an online solution to share phytosanitary certificates. And finally, communications and partnerships are also key activities because the new strategic framework also recognizes the importance of communicating, exchanging information across contracting parties, and ensuring that we work collaboratively with relevant international organizations. Next, please. Now, 2020 has been proclaimed as the International Year of Plant Health. And as recalled by other speakers, according to FAO and the IPPC attach a great importance to such an initiative. And I hereby wish to recollect the quote by the FAO Director General during the launch event of the IYPH, which was held in December last year, that focused on the importance of prevention and that as with human and animal health, prevention in plant health is better than cure. So on the other hand, much still needs to be done to secure plant health. I think this is a very important message that I wish to recall in this slide. Next, please. Now, I won't spend too much time on the objectives because I think they have been recalled in previous introductions. However, let me recall how important it is for us to ensure that the wider public is aware of the importance of plant health, but also political decision makers. And hereby, I would like to stress again the importance and provide my acknowledgement of the understanding by the previous speakers of the importance of such a theme for the wider public, and the need also to review legislations, increase resources, share knowledge and expertise and partnerships in the field of plant health. I think this has been done, and it's a much appreciated action. Now, with key initiatives for the IYPH, we're obviously suffering from somehow the impact of COVID-19. However, once the launch event had been taking place in person, we were planning for a series of events throughout 2020, which had to be moved or postponed to a later stage. And one of them is the 15th session of the Commission on Phytosanitary Measures, or CPM 15, which is expected to take place now in March 2021, and the first International Plant Health Conference scheduled to take place at the end of June in Helsinki, Finland. Now, nationally and regionally, many initiatives are taking place. I will just briefly mention the ones organized by the Lombardy region that include the application of the IYPH visual identity on trams, in the Milan train station, and also other venues. An example of the application of the visual identity in the Republic of Korea, for example, with that flag that you see on the top left, which is nothing but the IYPH logo. And finally, the minting of 3 coins to commemorate the year by Italy, Belgium, and Mexico, as well as the issuing of postage stamps now by over 20 countries. So these are all initiatives that are very useful in order to raise awareness of the theme and importance to tackle it. Now, in terms of communication, I would just like to highlight the important work that has been undertaken by FAO and the IPPC in collaboration with the Steering Committee of the year, which include a series of videos, including a promotional video that we have seen in the beginning of this event, but also various videos for stakeholders, including for children, and the launch of the human interest stories relating to plant health, as well as several publications inclusive of an activity book for children, for example, and a brochure. We also launched a photo contest, an art and drawing competition, so I really welcome your participation to that. And other types of initiatives. In this regard, I would like to highlight the study on the impact of plant health on climate change, which is ongoing, and again, whose outcomes are to be presented next year. the article on nature plants relating to science diplomacy for plant health and highlighting the importance of global phytosanitary research coordination. Some of the regional campaigns that are being undertaken, for example, by EPO with the Don't Risk It campaign, which we would like to make it global, and other initiatives like the FAO Ambassadors Program that is also making some progress now. Finally, I would like to leave you with this call for participation. Everyone can contribute to the activities of the International Year of Plant Health. First of all, by using what has been produced in terms of logos, materials that you can find on our website and also on our Trello board. You can promote and participate in the photo contest and the art and drawing competition for children. You can also be active on social media. We have created certain hashtags, Plant Health and IYPH 2020, as well as Salute delle Piante in Italian. And also you can participate in all activities. Share them with us, the Secretariat of the IYPH, as to be able to share them more widely across various networks. And finally, let me recall how everyone can be a plant health ambassador by getting to know about plant health and also doing more to protect plants. Thank you very much for your attention.
Bene, grazie Mirko.
Thanks, Mirko. Thank you very much indeed for reminding us of IPCC mission, the main areas of intervention. You need to know that IPCC, a multi-party alliance dating back to 1951, which lays down the accent on some key areas, i.e. International standard setting, and as we have heard, exchange of information, development of implementation capacity to transpose standards, then becoming international references. And he has also reminded us of the current impact of pathogens menacing plant health. He has been talking about new pests that are not unknown to us, but they are new potential guests who have turned out to be extremely aggressive. Xylella in Italy and other pathogens he has mentioned, which have threatened ecosystems that were not ready and responsive enough, or systems which had not been characterized by far-sighted measures, or policies were not implemented in a prudent manner. So this is really a reminder to all of us. We now have new pests, quarantine measures need to be applied, and this is something we need to be aware of also at this political decision-making level. In Europe, we are drawing up the new planning and the new European policies, which hopefully will adopt a well-balanced, rational approach, able to keep in due consideration these new emergencies. Without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Nico Horn, General Director of EPO, of the European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization, has been working for the phytosanitary service at local level for 20 years. He has been involved in European law-making processes and dissemination of standards, for instance, on e-phytosanitary certificates. The European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization is an intergovernmental body for non-experts. This is some information that aims at protecting plants and developing international strategies against introduction and spreading of plant diseases with countries also outside Europe and also European countries, Mediterranean countries, of course. But we will hear from him, and I give him the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Welcome to all colleagues. It's a pleasure to be connected with so many colleagues in plant health at many different places. And I would like to congratulate, of course, the Phytosanitary Service of the region of Lombardia, organizing this meeting, and with support from the NPPO of Italy, from Rome. I must say this is one of the regions that's most active in promoting plant health. We have already seen the logo and the images on the trams in Milan. I think you're really doing a great job in raising awareness for plant health. I would like to give a short presentation indicating EPO's activities in plant health, and I'm not sure, I think I'll have to share my screen. Let's see how it works. Here it is, it comes. Yeah, there it is. Can you see the screen? Yeah. So just a few slides on the EPO activities in the International Year of Plant Health. It was mentioned already, the United Nations has declared 2020 is an International Year of Plant Health, with its main aim to raise global awareness, but not just making awareness on plant health and protecting of plants, but also the role they play in ending hunger, reducing poverty, protecting the environment, and boosting economic developments. I won't spend too long on this. Just a short introduction on EPO. EPO is the European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization and has 52 member countries. And EPO is supporting its member countries in plant health. It's an intergovernmental organization, and EPO does that by developing standards in collaboration with experts from the region. But in this presentation, I would like to focus on how EPO is supporting its member countries in raising awareness of the importance of plant health. In the map, you see we are covering a very wide region, mainly Europe and the Mediterranean, but also expanding into Central Asia. Well, I want to make clear that the activities EPO is developing in International Year of Plant Health are intended to be complementary by those developed by the IPPC Secretariat and focused more on our region. First of all, we have a website especially dedicated to the International Year of Plant Health, where additional focus can be given to activities in our region. We have also, in our EPO bulletin, we have indicated the logo of the International Year of Plant Health, which actually coincides with celebrating the 50th year of the publication of the EPO bulletin. We've seen already the Don't Risk It posters, which are available in many languages, and more languages are being made by countries. From the EPO side, we have added the International Year of Plant Health logo. And these posters are downloadable from our website. And if you can see on the right, there's an Italian version also, and it mainly focuses on making the general public aware of the risk of taking plants when traveling. And we have seen this logo and this poster appearing in many airports already with many different languages. For instance, when I was in Moldova. This was also on the airport, local language and in English. We also produced a luggage tag with, on the one side, the Don't Risk It logo, but on the other hand also the logo of the International Year of Plant Health. Of course, whenever you visit the EPO office, which is more of a difficulty this year, they are available and you can take them. We also distributed, and we're happy we could distribute it before COVID-19 interrupted all kind of transport and travel. And calendar for 2020, with each month having a pest of the month illustrating the different aspects of pests that threaten plant health. It was mentioned already that initially this year, but now next year, there will be organized an international conference on plant health in Helsinki, and EPO will contribute to that by organizing side sessions on diagnostics and on remote sensing. Secondly, what's also a legacy beyond this year is that EPO has organized a plant health fellowship, which is intended for young people working in plant health to gain more international experience. It was intended to have the first call in October this year, but that's not very suitable to launch a call for people to go abroad if you're in the middle of a second wave. So we will postpone that a bit. So we'll be happy with the extension into next year of the international year. But it's the intention that this fellowship will continue for a number of years, ideally for 10 years. And in that way, getting people exposed and have a kind of legacy of the International Year of Plant Health. UFresco, in collaboration with EPO, EPO is hosting UFresco, which is an international network for research coordination in plant health. Research coordination and research in plant health is very essential to support the work of MPPOs in protecting plant health. You see on the one side the compendium that was produced by UFresco together with FIAM on research priorities for the Mediterranean region. See also this is a contribution for the International Year of Plant Health. It's become available, I think, 2 days ago. So it's available on the website. The link was not available yet when I produced this presentation, but if you go to the UFresco website, you can go. It's very nice, illustrating research priorities for the Mediterranean region. And UFresco also launched a video contest where scientists can post videos and they can contest within this contest. And the winner will be made available during the international conference in Helsinki. An important aspect that was mentioned already, and I saw it attending this conference from Rome. There is one supervising me and assisting me. This is Beastie, kind of mascot, which is a tool to raise awareness for plant health. And if you can see on the distribution map, which is available on EPO Global Database, it has spread over North America, New Zealand, Australia, many parts of Europe. COVID-19 had stopped it spreading through Africa, South America, and further into Asia. But hopefully soon we can spread this pest also in these continents. This is the nice thing of this pest. We promote spread instead of stopping spread to make people aware of the importance of plant health. And when traveling around the world, we got many photos shared from all parts of the world, also from Lombardia region, with an app showing PT. And I think that's one of the nice thing to make it more aware to reach the general public. And these are the activities that APO developed to support its member countries to make develop activities and initiatives in the context of the International Year of Plant Health and making the awareness of plant health bigger over the world. Thank you very much. Just seeing how I can. This one. Yeah. Sorry, I had to find the right button with my limited knowledge of Italian. Thank you very much.
Bene, grazie Nico.
Thank you very much, Nico. Together with Mariangela, we will try to give our own contribution. And hopefully we'll be able to meet you in person in Milan. I'd like to take this opportunity also to thank Mariangela Ciampitti and Mr. Campagna, who made a big effort to organize this conference. Thank you very much also for recalling some of the activities, some of which are already going on also at the Lombardy region. For instance, the Don't Risk campaign that was mentioned before, and you showed it, is currently underway, starting from the Milan train station through to the airports and the entry points. Now, we have Professor Mancuso supposed to deliver his speech. Let me briefly introduce him. He's professor at the University of Florence. He's director of the International Vegetable Neurobiology Lab. He's a scientist who's well known internationally. I will not mention all the awards that he has been granted because we would accumulate more delay. Starting from his studies, I believe that the professor, by the way, we are all fascinated by his studies on the intelligence and behavior of plants. He will talk about how plants can protect their own health, and maybe they can teach us something in this respect. So I hand over to him for his presentation. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm very happy to be able to talk for this International Year of Plant Health on this occasion. Many people before me reminded us that life on Earth depends on plants, but to what extent do we really depend on plants? Well, this is probably not very clear. If you look at this picture, this is the first image of our planet taken from space. It's 50 years old. I mean, 50 years ago, I think that this picture was taken on the 24th of December, 1968. Now, for the first time, we could see our planet from outside, and we saw it in colors. Now we are all aware of this image. This specific picture is called Earthrise, and it's one of the most popular images in the history of humanity. But today, all of us on our mobile phones, on our computers, we have an image of the Earth seen from space. How is the Earth made up? It features three colors mainly. Blue is water, white is clouds, and green is vegetation, is plants. Now, what I would like to underline is that without that green, there wouldn't be any blue or any white. I mean, if by chance or by some dramatic event were to disappear, in a matter of very few years, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere would increase so much that there wouldn't be any liquid water on planet Earth. So in other words, without plants, the Earth would be the same as the images of Mars, Venus, or Mercury, it would be a totally sterile planet. Therefore, our gratitude towards plants goes well beyond the fact that they ensure our survival with oxygen by providing for nutrition at any time in our life. But they're the very foundation of life on this planet. Now, the amount of plants is not well known to everybody. That's why it's fundamental to understand that protecting plant life is fundamental for the planet. Plants account for 85.5% of the Earth's biomass. What is biomass? It's the weight of everything that's alive. If we could weigh all the living beings, we would see that 85.5% of life is represented by plants. Whereas animals, which are normally the only goal of our work, or the only focus that we have, and I'm talking about all animals and not men, they account for 0.3% of biomass. So animals altogether account for 0.3% of the biomass, whereas plants account for 85.5%. So there is a huge disproportion, which is not accidental. It's a result of the fact that plants are much more capable than animals to survive and therefore protect and propagate their species. Now, despite the fact that there is a huge amount of plants, and we don't see them, we are totally blind. Literally speaking, this blindness has been studied. It's called cognitive dysfunction, and it's called plant blindness in English. So we don't see plants, basically. Why is that? Because there are so many, and we have evolved in a world that used to be green. In seeing all this green would have prevented our brain to concentrate on what was really important for its survival, for the survival of mankind, checking whether there were other animals or humans around. So at the beginning of our evolution, we learned to ignore the green. This was an evolutionary benefit in the beginning, but now it's becoming a big disadvantage because the fact that we don't see plants prevents us from understanding how the planet works. Now, these are only a few images among the hundreds of thousands of painters. Rock paintings have a peculiarity that indicate our plant blindness right away. There are none representing plants. There are no wall or rock paintings that represent plants. There are hundreds of thousands of these drawings and engravings featuring animals and humans, but there is almost none representing plants. Well, on the other hand, you should consider that these people representing these images used to live in a world that was made up not for 85.5%, but more than 90% of that world was represented by plants. How do we see plants? We continue seeing them according to this scheme, which was developed in the Renaissance, and the approach is even older. It dates back to Aristotle. We see plants belonging to a scale of nature, the stairway of nature. The first thing that appears on the left is stones that exist, and then there are plants and trees that live, and then there are animals that feel or hear, and then there is humans who are intelligent. Now this scale of nature is totally wrong, and we continue to see the world this way. Plants are not only alive, they are much more sensitive than animals, and we will see that. They're literally more sensitive than animals, and they're also intelligent, as any living being. It's impossible to imagine life without intelligence, the intelligence being the ability to solve problems. Why don't we see plants? It's partly because of the issue that I mentioned before, the cognitive dysfunction that has been studied, plant blindness, and partly because they are so different from us that we are not able to understand them. We're unable to understand them. We only understand what is very similar to us. The farthest the things are from us, the less we understand them. How can we understand plants? Because they're built in a totally different manner as compared to the way we humans are built. They're not individuals, first of all. We animals are individuals. It comes from Latin, individuus. It means undivisible. If you deal with plants, you know that plants are divisible. You split them, you divide them to propagate them. So by dividing them, their number increases. It's a total revolution as compared to the animal world. It's something that's totally different from the animal world. Why are they separable or divisible? Why are they not individual? Because their organization, and we're coming close to the issue of plant protection, is different from ours. We animals are built with a brain and individual or double organs that fulfill specific functions. We think with the brain, we breathe with 2 lungs, we digest with 1 stomach, we see with 2 eyes, and so on and so forth. Plants don't do that. Plants have spread across their body the same functions. I mean, the plants breathe with their full body, they see with the whole body, they hear and think with the whole body. Why is that? Why did they do that? Because plants evolved by knowing that they would be subject to predation. And this is a huge difference that there is between us and them. For us animals, being eaten up is the oldest and the most terrible and the most incredible nightmare, but not so for plants. Well, plants do not activate their defenses when faced with an attack, which would eliminate part of their body. So typically, when faced with herbivorous animals or small pests, big pests, or big mammals, plants only activate their defenses when the amount of body which is killed or taken away reaches a certain level. Up to a certain threshold, activating their defenses is not convenient or beneficial for the plant. So the plant prefers to be eaten up to a certain point rather than triggering its own defenses. So think how different they are from us. They are incredibly different from us. Their organization is very different from ours, as I was saying. It's a diffused organization. And it's a fundamental issue because this is the animal model. The animal model includes a brain governing some organs. And this type of organization is one that we have organized, that we have used everywhere. All human organizations are built this way, all of them. Today, we heard different directors from different organizations, the manager or people in charge of different structures, different organizations and institutions. That's a typical animal organization. We build our organizations similarly to ourselves. Is that the only way? No. You can build organizations in a totally different manner. For instance, as plants do. Plant organization is diffused. What are the benefits? There are many. There are pros and cons, of course. The pros are many. The benefits of a diffused organization include the fact that you have better knowledge of the problems because they are solved exactly where they originate. But there are many other pros. It's not an incident. but then we have robustness. This is a typically human organization. This is the division by caste that's typical in India. And it's built on the body, in this case, the body of a deity, but it's a human body. Brahmins represent the head, and then all the other classes representing different parts of the body. A typically vegetable organization, conversely, is one that represents modernity. The internet, for instance. The internet has been built as a plant. And that's why it's impossible to stop it. That's why it is unstoppable and incredibly robust. Because the internet is decentralized. You cannot block a decentralized network. These two pictures actually show the following. On the left, you have a representation of the internet. It's a real topographic representation of the internet. On the right, you see a representation of a root network. They're totally identical. Now, let's come to senses. Plants hear. They hear much more than animals. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. And it's the result of more than a century of scientific research. Today, we know that a single root tip can perceive at least 20 chemical and physical parameters. Some of them are represented on this slide, but there are many more. Many of these parameters, chemical and physical parameters, cannot be perceived by animals. For instance, not all animals can perceive electrical or magnetic fields or chemicals. Only few of them can, whereas plants can. Plants can accurately perceive a huge number of environmental parameters. Why is that? This depends on the fact that they're still, they cannot move. Of course, the only chance for surviving for a plant is linked to the fact that it can feel in advance that something is changing in its environment, so that the plant can implement potential changes in defenses. But this can only work if you know it long in advance. That's why plants are incredibly more sensitive. They can sense and perceive the environment much more than animals. I'd like to show you this short video clip where you see a noise source, and this is the behavior of roots. Look at what happens when they perceive 200 hertz sound. All roots turn towards the source of sound, which unquestionably proves that plants can perceive sounds. They can hear. For a long time, this has remained part of the naive domain. You know, plants can hear music, and that was sort of woo-woo science with no scientific evidence. But today, scientific evidence, we know that plants hear specifically some frequencies, very low frequencies, around 200 hertz, which is necessary for plants to identify a whole series of environmental parameters, including the presence of water in the ground. And they also produce sounds. The roots can generate sounds which are perceived by neighboring roots, which acts, I don't know how to define it, as like a sort of sonar, although the comparison is a bit far-fetched. This is a way for the root to understand how far the closest root is. So they use the sound and these clicks that they produce to govern the architecture of the root apparatus. Now, look at this video clip. This is a parasite plant called cuscuta. On the left, you have a tomato plant. Look at what cuscuta is doing. It can immediately find the tomato. So it feels it, it senses it, and then it starts parasiting on the plant. What is interesting here is that this cuscuta seed has 3 days from the germination time to find a vegetable host, or it dies. You've seen the ability that it has to find this host. Cuscuta is so good at that if you put it between two different plants, a tomato and a wheat plant, look what it's doing. It turns around to understand which one is the best to parasite on. And then it chooses tomato because it's easier, it's softer, easier to attack. But if the tomato plant weren't there, wheat would be good. So plants can sense the environment in a wonderful manner. Look at this other video clip. This is a bean plant. Beans, as you all know, are crawlers. And so they look for some support to grow. Look at this plant. It's obvious that this plant knows where its support is. So it knows the environment perfectly well, the surrounding environment. See how much effort the plant is making to reach the support, and using all its abilities. It grows, because plants move through growth, but it actually takes leaps, sort of jumps. And finally, it can touch the pole, the stick, and then with one last effort, but look at the sprint. It's a sort of spring that the plant is emulating, and the plant reaches the stick. When you look at the video like this, you shouldn't have any doubt about the fact that plants are totally aware of the surrounding environment. Now, the part underground, roots are even more interesting than the vegetative part, the part above ground, because roots are really the place hosting plant intelligence. That's the place where plants can manifest those behaviors that we normally associate with the animal world. The search, the ability to overcome obstacles and find nutrients. As a matter of fact, Charles Darwin in 1870 already, not incidentally, wrote that roots were the seat of intelligence of plants. This is a root tip. It's a root which is put in a sort of peculiar situation. So it's climbing up. Normally, this doesn't happen to roots. And see how the tip is moving. It's moving as any animal with no legs, like a worm or a snake. They would move the same way. And it can make decisions. These are Y-shaped chambers, that's the way they're called. In one of the branches, an attractive substance was placed, something that roots like. All of them can perceive and sense this substance and go the right direction. If you put a repellent in this system, all of the roots, or some of them, or almost all of them, because one chooses the wrong way. And that's interesting because it shows that this is not a mechanical response, but it's a choice, a true choice. So the vast majority of them take the direction opposite to the repellent. Let me now show you something that I believe to be extremely interesting. These are all video clips that were recorded in my lab in the last few years. So this dates back to 2017. How do you measure intelligence in animals? If you want to measure intelligence in a rat, you normally put it in a maze and you measure how long it takes for the mouse to solve or go through the maze. The faster the animal, the smarter he or she is. Can we do the same with plants? No, we cannot use time because time would be too long, but we can use different parameters. How many times it takes the wrong way, how many times a root would take the wrong direction in going through a maze, the more times it makes a mistake, the less intelligent it is. The red square is where the root should go, and it's a place where ammonium nitrate was placed, and that's the equivalent of cheese for a mouse. And let's see what the root does. It grows, and every time it comes to a fork, it stops for a second, it thinks, looks around, and it always chooses the best direction, the fastest way to reach, without errors, the red square, i.e. ammonium. So either this intelligence test is good for all or for none. You cannot say that animals going through a maze are intelligent and a root that does the same is not. I mean, this maze is not easy as it looks like. When I examined this video for the first time, when I showed it for the first time at a conference of botanics in Germany, I had it clear in my mind that some of them would say, you know, this is an easy maze, as if they saw several plants solving mazes. Now, I wanted to make an experiment. In a nearby room, I reproduced the same maze, and I asked them to go through the maze. An average botanic would take the wrong path 70% of the times. Of course, roots sense stimuli. They perceive factors that guide them to take the best way. But it's exactly the same thing that we do in a maze. We humans, when placed in a maze, we would rely on what we can perceive and sense to find the way out of the maze. I don't know how much I have available, and I don't want to bore you too much, but I wanted to tell you about an extraordinary ability that plants have. Because normally, especially today, which is devoted to plant health, what we normally do is we think of plants as something left at the mercy of other living beings with no possibility for them to defend themselves. Now, what I'm going to show you is one of the many, many examples that show exactly the opposite. There are many, many plants that start a symbiotic relationship, for instance, with ants. It's called Mirmocophilia. How does it work? The plant feeds and gives accommodation to an animal like an ant here. You can see ants living in these big thorns. So they're literally hosted by plants. In these thorns, they lay their larvae, and they can live there easily. So not only does the plant provide accommodation to ants, but the plant also feeds them. It provides food, which is represented by the orange spheres. These are fruits produced by the plant specifically for the ants. And in order for the ants to take them, transform them, and use them for their own survival. So this is a perfectly balanced diet for the ants. Everything is made to measure so that they can go through the hole. This is all done by the plant and not by the ants. The plant also provides this nectar. It's a non-flowered nectar. It's high in sugar, and ants love it. Look at the ants. They go there and drink the nectar, and they take a lot of pleasure in doing that. In exchange for that, what do ants do for the plant? They patrol the plant, and they attack any aggressor that comes in. Not just animals attacking the plant. Here, for instance, you see a plant that is coming far too close to their own plant. So what do the ants do? They go there and cut it off. And they do so with great effectiveness. And they attack any animal. This is a crop hopper, which is much bigger than the ants, but they would attack the crop hopper and actually kick it away. They even attack large herbivorous animals like giraffe or elephants. Since their bite is very painful, they send everybody away. They make them run away. They're so good that they prevent any plant from growing along a diameter of 3 meters from the hosting plant. They were called devil's gardens in the Amazon. There is no explanation why suddenly you would find plants in the forest that were living in a circle that was totally deprived of grass. That was because of ants. So it really looks like a symbiosis. So the plants feed the ants, and the ants help the plant to survive. But the issue is much more complex. Look at what happens if you put bread on one of the plants. The ants come in and throw the bread away, which is quite peculiar because bread would be precious to ants. But if you put sugar, look at what happens. The ants come in and they throw it away. Now, this behavior cannot be explained. This is unexplainable. For ants, there is nothing more precious than sugar. Absolutely nothing is more precious than sugar. So why do they do that? So we've started working on this phenomenon a few years ago, so I can tell you what happens. What happens is that plants put in this nectar. This nectar would no longer go back to their nest. They would live on plant wants more defensibility. It increases some manure toxins that make them more aggressive. When it's not necessary, the plant will cool them down. So the plant can modulate the ant's behavior simply by using the compounds that it hides away in the nectar. So plants can defend themselves. And usually when they cannot defend themselves, it's because the ecosystems where they are have been changed and destroyed by humans. But when ecosystems are pristine, plants can perfectly defend themselves.
Vorrei concludere questa mia breve presentazione semplicemente dicendo che le piante non sono soltanto, un po' come il titolo della giornata e di questa grado di difendere loro stessi, ma hanno la capacità e la possibilità di difendere.
And they can also protect human beings. They protect us from our problems. Global warming is the greatest problem mankind has and will have in the next few decades. We already perceive its preliminary consequences. They will become even more evident in the near future. Plants can be the solution to this problem. Today, we know exactly how many plants we need. We need 1,000 billions of trees on the earth. It's a huge quantity. But this is what we need. The cost for planting 1,000 billion trees on the earth is just a tiny fraction of the money we should otherwise spend to mitigate some way problems arising from COVID-19. Just a tiny fraction, which would have allowed us to reduce carbon emissions by 2/3 in the industrial era. This would allow us to solve problems. It's not a matter of money or costs, and it's not a problem of space. If we break down the available surface by the number of human beings, we could plant 2,000 billion trees. Consider farming soil, which has been abandoned. It offers enough space for 6,000 billion plants. Plants also represent a real opportunity to solve our problems. So the subtitle of the International Year of Plant Health, i.e. protecting plants and protecting human lives, is the best expression of that concept. We protect our own lives, and by protecting plants and planting more trees, we can protect our future. Thank you very much indeed. Good. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Mancuso, for this keynote lecture. There will also be an interview which is going to be published on our website. Thanks for reflecting our gratitude towards plants. We need to change our perception of plants. And thanks very much for this exhaustive overview on how our organizations could change with a positive impact on plant life to protect the plants and human beings. Plants that have a longer life than animals or human beings. With these initiatives, gathering different experts, we try to do that. We try to do networking, and we try as much as possible to promote integrated knowledge. As I have told you at the beginning of this event, the councillor had an urgent meeting on the health emergency. He's now available. We have read out his written opening remarks, but he would like to welcome you. Good morning. My apologies for changing the agenda. Considering the importance of this topic, the authoritativeness of the speakers, despite all constraints and all problems that the COVID-19 pandemic is inflicting to us, I wanted to be here with you, to welcome you, and to thank all of those who, either in presence or remotely, will contribute to this event to make it even more important and interesting also for the organizers, for the Lombardian region and the phytosanitary service. I will not get into the technicalities of this topic. As a councillor, I wouldn't like to make scientific mistakes, but I would like to share my view on the political approach, on our guidance. I would like to thank Mr. Razzoni, co-workers and ERSAF for the cooperation in the phytosanitary sector to disseminate knowledge around these topics. We have shared some figures about the important role of farming in our region in Lombardy. Quality and productivity produces, therefore, are central, and phytosanitary campaigns are pivotal to that. Most of all, considering that we need to produce more food, more produces to feed the planet. Farming productivity, therefore, is a central topic, and it's made even more contemporary by globalization. Every year we have to tackle predators, new pests, new unknown diseases, which sometimes find operators unprepared, and this makes farming even more challenging. So self-procurement and tackling emergencies is now a priority for farmers in the light of globalization as a whole. And it's going to become more and more important also because we are traveling, we are moving faster all over the world. How can we tackle this topic? My very personal perspective is that we need to strengthen the resources. We need more human beings, more local operators, and we are doing that. Maybe for too many years we have taken these topics for granted. We have stopped investing in financial and human resources, and we should also coordinate these resources at national and international level across borders. I am a great supporter of regional autonomy, but when it comes to phytosanitary measures, we need to undertake an integrated approach. We need to share knowledge, hands-on experiences, information to be stronger and more effective in tackling problems that don't stop before boundaries. And we need to be science-based. We need to share information, to invest in research, to deploy and develop tools, agri-food technologies that are able to reconcile the needs of markets and consumers. So phytosanitary measures and sustainability, which is possible thanks to research and innovation, to ongoing advancement of technologies in chemicals, in agronomy, and in all of the tools that integrated pest management entails. And we also need to strengthen our tools, our weapons. We need to take a step further. We have approved an agreement with member countries. We need to strengthen risk management. We need a common guidance within the context of our farming policy to protect farmers with more effective support policies. We live in a very complex period, but I think it's fundamental to tackle the complexity and to be fact and science-based and raise awareness among the general public. There is sometimes a perceived conflict between what we need to do to counteract the problems with negative impacts on public opinion, with a negative impact on agricultural production, and what the public knows in terms of phytosanitary measures. We need to talk with the people. We need to move out of our scientific sector, engaging the public opinion and drawing attention towards these central topics. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution, for your activity. We are talking about science, research, training, dissemination of knowledge, and we will always support you in all of these activities. Thank you very much indeed. We would like to thank the councillor who is going to leave us. We are recording this meeting, and there will be follow-up initiatives that I would like to explain and share with you. Our region, Lombardy, has organized several initiatives pursuant to the international schemes of events which will involve all of us in the next few months. I don't know whether you can upload my presentation.
Dunque, mi dicono che...
There's also a video that you haven't seen. Maybe we show it later. I have plenty of slides, but I will be short and concise in presenting them. It's my task to report about the initiatives in our region, in Lombardy. Our initiatives have a specific target in transposing the proposals in the context of the International Year of Plant Health. We have thought of raising awareness about plant health, leveraging on younger generations, on teenagers and children. To do that, we want to turn our attention to schools, teachers and professors, intercepting, therefore, people who are educating younger generations. We have set up a project with the General Directorate for Education and in cooperation with the Regional Education Department. It's a project for primary schools for kids aged from 5 years, from 6 to 10, and then secondary school and high school involving teachers. The activity, of course, poses an additional challenge at the time of COVID-19 emergency. We will have to work on two fronts. So there will be two criticalities. There will be restrictions on teaching on classes in school buildings because of the pandemics. So there might be restrictions on organizing extra meetings. That's why we always have a plan B, an alternative plan. This is the roadmap of activities which have started some months ago. We have started programming and planning using FAO materials. This is the launch event, as Professor Mancuso said earlier. We have a very authoritative testimonial who has given a key lecture, and Professor Mancuso will be helpful in conveying the message on our platform. We have already developed tools that are targeting these specific age groups. So the formats of these materials have been adjusted to the various age brackets. All all of that is supported by tools that teachers can use for awareness raising and education of school children. We have a specific website, which is a sort of traditional container of contents, where we can upload and publish documents and materials that can be useful for the purposes of this project. We have already covered that. The website is subdivided into 4 macro sections, providing snapshots. We have in the Word section, so the broadest scenario. There we will upload documents and materials that you find in the websites of international organizations. There is then an introduction. This is the web page explaining what the target and the topic is. We are talking about plant health. That's the key message. And there is then a sub-menu focusing on some targets. On the one hand, there is a reference to phytosanitary activities, and then to citizens and sector operators. Next slide. One slide back, there are 3 subsections, and there is also a reference to our region because of the message needs to be deeply rooted in our local territory. Then there is a description of the project, which is available to everybody, to all those who want to be onboarded. And then we have a time schedule. There is a section describing events. There is a calendar of initiatives, not only of our region, of course, and we also publish contents and documents and reports about this initiative in this specific section. Then, always with the reference to the school project, we have developed, for instance, a contest for students, and let's take a step back. We have different formats for the different targets. For primary schools, there will be an easier format in line with their skills. There will be an art project. For secondary schools, we have a multimedia contest. There will be a photo contest. And for high schools, they can develop a material, video clips. And these materials will be assessed by a jury, and their value will be enhanced through the website. There will be, of course, acknowledgement for the best, for the most creative productions. Here you see some details of the initiative. Let me just dwell upon some significant details for secondary school students. The idea is to stage a day where they can really see how phytosanitary checks take place at Malpensa Airport, where we import trees and plants. They will make a first-hand experience. They will acquire some knowledge of how operators monitor plants when they test plants, inbound plants for pests, to help them understand how flowers, plants, vegetables that are then distributed in our country follow a very to be tested and inspected to ensure their quality and, of course, their safety in full compliance with international rules and standards. At ERSAF in Curno, in Lombardy, we have a center where there will be training and educational activities. We will be talking about plants using the contents that have already been presented earlier today, raising the bar of knowledge in the field of scientific evidence for schools, focusing on plants, vegetables, and trying to ensure that the attendants then can take home a little plant that they will help grow up. Observation and first-hand experience is the first step in this journey of knowledge. And to support the project, there is also an ad hoc editorial plan, a social media plan, also on ERSAF website with the sponsors to help reach out to students in Lombardy. And we will try to organize a photo gallery with all the productions of these students, acknowledging the value of the best ones in the social media. Beast in the Bag, you have already heard from Nico what this testimonial is all about. Here you see Beastie in different settings. It's possible to download this drawing and color it with pencils. There are funny names. Different names for Beastie the Bag. His or her name is. There is a preferred name. They can select the name. Beastie the Bag will probably be called Ambrogio here in Italy, but we still have to make the final decision about the name. Sounds very Milanese, Ambrogio. It's the saint patron of the city of Milan. Let me just conclude by repeating something that the speakers have already alluded to. We are now staging this visual campaign conveying the don't risk message. Here you see the central railway station of Milan displaying the message. Passengers stop and read, they try and understand, and then there are other support tools which have been used in other contexts in our region. And of course, the idea is to intercept the people there where they move, like the central railway station, 320,000 passengers also at this time of remote working. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. After my contribution, before the next one, we have the short video clip. We have already seen it here in the conference room, but maybe it has not been broadcasted in streaming.
Sono la casa di molti e nutro milioni. La mia abbondanza è prosperità, ma la mia carenza può essere fatale. Copro gran parte della terra e il mio influsso arriva ben oltre. Esisto da molto più di quanto immaginiate, ma il mio mondo è in pericolo. Dobbiamo riconoscerlo e mettere più impegno per assicurare il mio futuro. Perché io merito protezione. Dalla mia salute dipende la vostra. La vostra vita dipende dalla mia. Io sono le piante. Io sono la vita.
Bene, spero.
Very well. Hopefully everyone could see the video this time. Now we have a number of presentations by representatives from universities, the schools, the school office, academies, and associations. We will start with the Regional School Institute. Mrs. Simona Chinelli will take the floor. She knows the school system very well. We know that this office will play a big role in implementing the project that I just described. So I'm happy to hand over to Mrs. Simona Chinelli. On behalf of the Director General, Augusto Celada, I'd like to thank the Lombardy region. I'd like to thank the Lombardy region not only for inviting us today in this extremely high quality contest in terms of scientific and cultural content, but I'd like to thank the Lombardy region for the project that has been presented today and will be targeted to schools. We believe that this project is particularly strategic at this specific time. Why is it strategic? Starting from this year, schools in Italy will start teaching civic education, which is new, but it's required by Law 92 of 2019. It's an important piece of legislation. It's an important law. Article 3 of such law, among the various topics that students will have to learn at school in a systematic and cross-border manner, there is education to sustainability, or better, environmental education, environmental friendly development and protection of cultural heritage, food and agricultural resources. Schools in the past few years have already devoted many hours, many projects to environmental education issues. But what changes is that starting from September, schools have to create their own curriculum devoted to this matter, specifying contents, hours, projects, and resources. So schools have a very strong need from this year on to have documents, materials available. First of all, they need to have high-value scientific data available regarding all topics indicated by the law. Secondly, they need to be able to build, well, actually our schools have already been doing this in the past few years, but they will have to do it even more now. They need to build and develop territorial networks. And three, they need to guide students to looking at phenomena, realities that are subject to their study in a tangible manner. They have to be able to apply what they learn in school in reality. So the content delivered in school need to be applied. So this means that in addition to packages of information, schools will have to put this information packages into practice by giving an active role to students, not just in terms of producers of new communication materials regarding the information that they receive, but also students need to be put in a position to understand their own territory and to put in practice what they learn in their own territory. Why am I saying this? Because in addition to teaching civic education in Italy, especially in high schools, we have the ability to apply DPCO, this mix between school and work. So the issue of plant health, as it has been discussed today, and let me thank you for this cross-border, integrated, multidisciplinary approach, because this is what schools have to deliver today. This is what the ministry, the central ministry, is asking schools to do, taking this integrated approach, giving, however, the students the opportunity to put that in practice. DPCOs will offer an opportunity to our schools to follow this path, plant health, and everything that this entails from a scientific and non-scientific viewpoint. Because these topics should be spread among the people, starting from primary schools. They should be discussed and taught in all schools, not just in technical, agriculture-oriented high schools. They may be the number one target, but all schools need to deliver these messages. Because raising awareness on plant issues is also a topic for the humanities. So it's part of humanities science, as some of the presentations today demonstrated. So we are ready to start acting from tomorrow. But this approach may also involve another piece of the educational system. ITS is what they call. These are highly specialized schools after high school, so it's pre-university, that could give technical content specifically on the topic of plant health, with the various specialties characterizing our technical high schools. I don't want to take more time for the question, but I'd like to once again thank on behalf of the regional directorate for the work you've already carried out, especially because this information, your professionalism, the Lombardy system will provide material to all in a structured and organized manner. So we are willing and available for all potential partnerships and cooperation in order to implement the project together with you and enrich it in light of the suggestions that will come from the schools that will use, read and study and examine your materials. So thank you very much once again, and good work. Thank you, Mrs. Chinelli, once again. Thank you very much for your invitation. We have work to do, and your support will be crucial. In addition to fine-tuning the material that we have, there is a brand new material as well. In the phytosanitary area, ERSAF has already developed an app for all citizens. So being an app, it's good for children and young adults. So once you download the app, you can receive information on plants, alien organism pests, thinking of integrating different players in the domain of phytosanitary health. This helps to identify a pest and separate it from a good insect. So with the app, you can recognize the insect or pest, and if it's a pest, you can report it. Because sometimes, we not just monitor public land, plants and pests also live in private properties. So this is an easy tool that allows to report the presence of pests, and it can be used as part of the teaching system. Students would realize that everyone is able to make a contribution. So thank you very much. Now we have Professor Gianni Giglioli, who's next in the agenda. He represents the Lombardy universities, and especially the State University of Milan, the Università degli Studi of Pavia, and the University of Brescia. I think he's connected remotely, he's not present in person. So if he can hear us, I'll be glad to hand over to him.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Razzoni. Can you hear me? Okay. So thank you also to the organizer for having invited me. I'm professor of ecology and plant protection at the Sustainable Agriculture degree course of the Brescia University. So I was asked to represent the research challenges and contributions related to plant health that are performed here at the university's network in Lombardy. I would like to summarize and touch different examples and of collaboration between researchers in order to provide knowledge and to support with science what could be the future of plant health. Next one, please. So in my presentation, I will touch mainly three items. One is a brief understanding or an exploration of what is the meaning of plant health. And second, we explore more in deep what are the approaches to plant health that are performed here in Lombardy. And finally, I try to explore what are the implications for plant health management of all the achievements in science. Next one. Okay, so we know that plant health is at the basis of human health via the ecosystem services they provide. So in our understanding now, plant health and plant in general are at the basis of what we can call the One Health. So in an holistic perspective, plants are really what can link human health, environmental health, and animal health. And for sure, we have to link environmental health to sustainability. So that means that plant helps us in overcome any idea that humans are at the center of the world or the universe. So next one, but what is plant health? For sure, we know that plant health is not just the absence of suffering of diseases for a plant, but it's something more complex. For sure, we know that plant health is an emerging property, such as a property of a system of interacting and dynamical components. We also know and try to understand that plant health is related to the delivery of ecosystem services. They are so important for our life and the life of the planet. Next one. So this is a more complex slide that can help us in understanding the link between what are all the external drivers influencing plant health. We know that we have a abiotic component, the resources, environmental variables, but also biological elements influencing the plant individual and population traits. We know pests, but also we have competitive species, but also very important mutualistic interactions. Then we have a human component. We know that are managing plants for agriculture and not only, but also we are managing landscape, modifying it. So plants react to all these external drivers and according to their strategy are characterized by specific level of health that in turn influences the ecosystem services. So acting on the external drivers, knowing better the individual and population plant traits, we can also influence what are the ecosystem services plant deliver. Next one. So next, okay, so I try here to summarize, and no, next one, please. I try here to summarize some example of the research effort universities in Lombardy that are performed in the University of Lombardy. They are most relevant for plant health. I follow a scheme that I consider three level. Next one. So the idea of first of all, previous one. Okay. So the idea is that we can look at the health of the plant and the contribution of research considering different level of resolution from molecules to the continental scale. Then we can understand how research can contribute to plant health, try to explore the degree of involvement of interacting components, for example, interaction among species, for understanding how the system dynamics react to any kind of perturbation. Then we will explore how different dimensions that are addressed in research are relevant for what is plant health, but also sustainability. Next one. So these are the three universities I represent. We have on the left the University of Milan, Statale, that is the most important university in Lombardy, and the one is the most important in Italy. Then we have on the right the University of Pavia, that is a medium-sized university, as is the University of Brescia in the center to which I belong to. And these three universities are based and work researchers, lab, and groups dedicated to plant health with strong connection with international research institutions and organizations, but also with an important attention devoted to national and local needs linked to agriculture and environmental protection. Here follows some example, next one. So it's very important, first of all, try to understand the molecular basis of what is plant health. Many efforts are performed here in Lombardy in terms of understanding the mechanism at the molecular level involving the role of DNA and other molecules in terms of identify, monitor invertebrate diversity, but also pathogens and their impact on plant health. Next one. So it's also important the individual scale. So the attempt to understand how knowing biology of the plant and the enemies, we are able to better understand how they interact and how these interactions could influence plant growth and productivity. Next one, molecular and individual level are also linked. So we have the possibility to link what are the mechanisms and the physiological basis at molecular level in order to better understand what are the performance of the plant at the individual level. At the next level, we try to understand how the individual plants are linked to the population. So this is because we investigate the interaction between invasive species and plants at the population level, also trying to understand better what are the risks of entry, establishment, spread, and impact of plant pests, but also investigating the effect of external drivers, also by abiotic drivers, on the population dynamics of pests and plants. The next one, finally, our research effort, no, the next one, sorry. The next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Our research are also devoted to better understanding what occurs at the continental scale. So in this way, we try to develop tools for the evaluation of pest impacts, but also to prioritize the risk associated with different plant pests. Next one. The third level of our approach is the systematic. The second is the systematic analysis, trying to investigate the relation between pests and plants, but also trying to better pose the scientific basis of controlling pests via biological agents or biotechnological methods for better controlling harmful organisms for plants. The next one. Systemic approach is also related to the idea of better understanding what are the mechanisms at the landscape level in terms of reducing the impact of phytosanitary products, better understanding what is the role of biodiversity in the ecosystem services and the relation between the different biodiversity components with plant health, ensuring the provision of these important aspects that are for our life, the ecosystem services. Our research, next slide, is also devoted to explore how research outputs, new methodologies and techniques, as well as science-based management schemes that have important connection with all the dimensions related to sustainability. Research in Lombardy addresses the economic dimensions, for example, exploring the synthesis of new bioactive molecules from agricultural food waste, or producing biofertilizers from fermentation of Trichoderma species. Next slide. So the role of the next one, yes, please. The 18, please. The environmental dimension is also very important for the identification and use of fungi that are useful for bioremediation, for example, degrading plastic or oil or pesticide in the environment. The environmental component is very much important, and we address it, for example, promoting a natural capital conservation through extraction and conservation of genetic material for the generation of new plant varieties, but also understanding what are the best practices for conservation of different biodiversity components into the field. The next one, also social and governance dimension are included in the action of our university with the aim of integrating pest management, resilient communities, functional biodiversity, and land use at the most integrative level of analysis for managing plant health issues. A social and government aspect are also important because we know that plant pests are impacting on many aspects of our social and economic life. For example, influencing the food security or threatening human health. Both these aspects are considered in the research performed at our 3 universities. Okay, next one. All these important results and achievements are considered in terms of scientifically based management paradigms. We started many years ago from the idea that we can manage the plant health on single technology. This was at the basis of the Green Revolution, integrating a specific technology with a linear point of view in which technology is able to solve a problem. With the introduction of IPM programs, we were based our intervention with the idea of better understanding the system dynamics and base our intervention on knowledge. Next one. Now we are facing a challenge, and the challenge is the challenge of complexity. I've tried to show different elements of this complexity, and for that, the management of plant health has to change in the direction of considering multi-level analysis from molecules to field to area-wide management. But also it's necessary to consider that many actors deal with the plant health problems. That is because we have to consider all the components of the system, their interests, their cultures, their traditions. And finally, plant health is related to multi-sector problems, and we have to consider different stakeholders that are involved. Next one, but how to deal with this complexity and how to fill the gap between research and applications. We need tools, tools that allow to assess and coordinate information, knowledge, and models, but that link to easy-to-use interface. This is really the challenge. So linking the complexity of the system with the complexity of the representation of the system with tools that will help the managers to taking decision in this complex environment. And finally, we have to promote collaborative solutions. In an adaptive management scheme, this means complementing the hierarchical and market solution with the idea of that we need to support communication among stakeholders, sharing perspective with the mutual support and collaboration and trust. So basically, the solution of plant health related issues is a matter of cooperation and integration of knowledge. Next one. So I would like to thank you, all the colleagues. Next one, please. I would like to thank all the colleagues that contributed to this presentation. They are from the 3 universities, but we also to thank colleagues from ERSAF and Regione Lombardia who give us the possibility to present our results. Thank you very much.
Un ringraziamento al professor G.
We would like to thank Professor Giglioli and all the colleagues he has mentioned in his presentation, in his acknowledgements. He has summarized an approach that he has defined as new paradigm. All interventions of the speakers before him have said how important research is in plant protection and plant health. And this system, of course, needs to receive contribution from university research. There is a network of own labs and external labs. He has mentioned the molecular basis of DNA diagnostics to identify pests and their impacts on plants. Of course, experimenting new protection solutions requires development of research. There are several examples, several papers on rice rust, for instance, or studies on antagonists against the Asian bug. We need, for instance, to explore the impact when we introduce a new pest on local balances. The new paradigms replacing a linear approach involves a multi-level, systemic, multi-sectoral, multi-factor approach involving many stakeholders in a perspective of economic and environmental sustainability, preserving biodiversity. Now, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Damiano De Simine. Dr. Damiano De Simine comes from the Faculty of Farming Sciences. He is a PhD in Biological Sciences at the University of Milan. For many years, he has chaired the Italian and the Regional Environmental Association. He has still got very close connections with the Lega Ambiente, with the Environmental Association, and today he's representing environmental associations. Let me just give him the floor for his speech. Thank you very much indeed for giving me the floor. Talking about plant health in such a special year where there are few attendants wearing face masks poses us in front of a dilemma. We are talking about plant health and associating it with human health. There is a parallel between human and plant health. Among the lessons we should have learned earlier, there is this interconnection. The lessons we should have learned earlier relate to the fact that health of people is protected through prevention. Prevention is an item of ordinary costs, but allows to prevent huge damage. Does this apply to plants as well? Yes, of course. Professor Mancuso has given an exhaustive overview with great scientific passion on the topic, but I don't want to dwell upon avatar aspects. I would rather like to refer to his message that the defense potential of plants depends on ecosystems which need to be well protected and well balanced. So we were talking about the symbiosis, call it as you like, with ants, is not possible if there are no ants. And we have pollinators, for instance, that are also endangered, just to mention some of the topics we are dealing with. Health of ecosystems is the first form of prevention. Resilience allows us to tackle more consciously all of these topics. We should have prevented epidemic disorders, also in human medicine. The same goes for plant health. In 2020, we have taken for granted that plants had to be treated, that epidemics and disorders or infestations have to be prevented, that there need to be specific treatment protocols, but first and foremost, we need to prevent them. Now, there are discussions underway. We need to walk the talk. We need to act within the context of the new agricultural policy. So insurance is very important with Minister Bellanova, with the EU Council of Ministers. We have been discussing a lot about insurance policies for farmers. It's a topic which really deserves attention. But if I think of Lombardy, and if we have, I don't know, rice growers, 1,000 hectares of rice growing land, you know, that's not difficult to protect with an insurance policy. The decision to grow just one variety is exposing the farmer to a risk. You know, insurance policies free of charge for everybody is, you know, not acceptable, because EU taxpayers will have to pay the bill in the end. We need to be very realistic when analyzing farming in our region. We need to wonder whether we can guarantee plant health that are crucial for our diet in an area where we are growing most of all rice in water fields. We have an average density of cattle of 5 to 6 cows per hectare, very high density of cattle, more than in the Netherlands, to give a term of comparison. That's really exposure to risk. We need to consider how to dispose waste products, and we need to do it safely. We need to tackle problems and criticalities, making regional farming so important, but so vulnerable, so highly specialized, so localized. We have rice monoculture, and there is no balance. We need to import, for instance, waste water, waste liquids for these cultures. In other areas, we have a surplus, and cattle depend for feeding on imported feeding products. There is no balance. There is no self-sufficiency. Who cares about soybean health? Soybeans are being grown with chemicals in a Latin American country. Well, not in our backyard, of course, but there's a price to pay in the end. We need to look at farming in Lombardy and ask ourselves whether this modality is sustainable. We can find safe drugs to manage the situation where there is no resilience, no stability. How long can we go on doing it? Or do we want to become more resilient? Do we want to prevent disorders with the systems that are not just depending on buyer price list, selecting the cheapest product? We rather want to take a systemic approach to adopt a sustainable strategy also in regional farming, because there is fertile ground for that. If we talk about plant health, if we talk about prevention, we are talking about prevention first, then we need to make the cattle growing and farming system more resilient, more flexible, and less vulnerable than it is today. It should be less dependent on monocultures. It should support livelihoods thanks to wise combination of well-balanced strategies without exposing the region to dependence on EU subsidies. Monoculture is probably the most evident snapshot of how the health state of plants in Lombardy is really severely impaired. We need strong restructuring policies in animal growing and also in farming with thorough interpretation and wise use of the resources that we will have in the next few years. And I deem that besides the very important topics which have been discussed at FAO and EU and level, besides the International Year of Plant Health, we need to be science-based and translate this science into political actions. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. De Simine, for drawing the attention, as the councillor had already done before him, to planning of agricultural policies with a possible interaction with plant protection at various levels. So the topic would require more than one day to be discussed in depth. I would like to refer to prevention. As we have heard, human health is closely intertwined with plant health. And our initiatives therefore aim at disseminating knowledge, because prevention is an action where we are all accountable. Then there are also economic impacts. There is a well-structured cascade mechanism, and all of these topics are really red hot. Agricultural policies will have to face the need to intensify production, ensuring sustainability. And this is a dilemma. As the regional councillor said earlier, we need to address it using technological innovation, and not only. We are also confronted with the need not to give rise to situations, as we have heard earlier, not to raise awareness about some misleading information. We might leave it to the others to cut trees to ensure food supply where we are not self-sufficient. It's, of course, a very extensive topic which goes beyond the discussions today because of these interconnections. So there is really a debate which is underway, and all of these contributions have been extremely useful. Let me just hand over to Flavio Barozzi, who is already here, Director of the Agrarian Regional Society here in Lombardy.
Lascio a lui la parola.
So you have the floor. Let's see if I can turn the microphone on. There we go. You know, speaking at the end of such an intense and interesting morning program implies the risk of repeating what has already been said. But since I speak on behalf of the Lombardy Agrarian Society, which I preside, it's an Academy of Agriculture since 1981, and also on behalf of the House of Agriculture, it's another cultural institution because it's an association of ideas. Although it's more recent and it's presided by Professor Carla Sornini, and I wish to extend her greetings to you. Now, I believe it's appropriate to reiterate some remarks and considerations that were made before on the message which is embedded in the statement of the International Year of Plant Health, namely the focus and attention to be devoted to vegetable organisms for the survival and life of the planet. Their health conditions is obvious because of the various functions of plants. Food production and economic functions are self-evident, especially to people like us dealing with agriculture on a daily basis. Sometimes we take this for granted, although the fundamental and central role of this has been indicated before. 80% of the food is of vegetable origin. There are other aspects that are less visible but just as important. Plants play a fundamental role in landscaping and in maintaining the hydrogeological and territorial balance, which must also consider the actions of humankind in the management of the territory and forestry, especially in a sensitive setting such as the Italian landscape, which is full of potentials but also weaknesses. In the urban setting, the role of plants for usability and the livelihood of the urban context is obvious. New plants in healthy environments where plant health is key is a qualifying element for the new urban targets. Just as important is the maintenance and care for the existing vegetable resources. Plants, especially, not only those of agricultural interests, are in charge of carbon sequestration in view of a world population of 7.5 billion individuals on the growth. We also should consider the energy consumption and emissions that change the climate, which cannot be eliminated altogether. So we need to pay more attention to plants, and this is not just a slogan. Unfortunately, there are several risk factors concerning plant health, which have been highlighted this morning. The dissemination of new diseases, new pests favored by real or potential climate change, and especially due to the effects of globalization, movement of people and goods. That's before everybody's eyes. There are several cases of introduction of new pests on the national or Lombardy territory. The Asian bug, the Papilla, and Xylella are just a few examples. This mandates a lot of focus on these issues. The Phytosanitary Service, which has just turned 100 years old in Italy, indicate the central role played by this aspect that should be given more emphasis in line with the EU regulations. Early diagnosis and treatment are key, also with a view to providing prevention. Everybody understands, especially this year, the importance of prevention. Scientific research based on interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches will have to operate in a way that allows them to apply increasingly more advanced prevention, diagnosis, and treatment approaches. The development and application of instruments for the protection of crops and agriculture will have to go through the concept of environmental integration and sustainability, which should be the linchpin of every human activity. The use of technical means with a minimum environmental impact, research to identify suitable and an effective instrument, together with the skills and knowledge to reduce the impact, are the key actions to be implemented to reach this target. In the complex domain of phytoiatry, a lot has been done with a view to economically managing crops, offering advanced products with the support, which is increasingly more important, of decision-making and technical instruments such as this precision farming. There is still a long way to go, but this adds balance. We should focus on improvement, genetic improvement especially, that could allow to control fungi, mycoplasma, pests, bugs, and so on and so forth. It's more difficult, however, to obtain weed control. Allow me to add that we should follow the example of plants, find synergies with ants. We should also strengthen a network of independent technical research and support, which is faulty, unfortunately, in many sectors of our agriculture. Now, the need to network and spread culture on this topic that is often referred to, including Professor Ciampitti when she spoke at a workshop organized by ERSAF on the 28th of September at the University of Milan, devoted to the same topic, is something that we agree on. Any action that can contribute to disseminating knowledge and raising awareness, improving the level of information, not only among the specialists, is a topic that is very close to our heart. We are already committed to implementing some initiatives. For instance, the cooperation between the Lombardy Agrarian Association and the University of Milan and Pavia. I will conclude by thanking also on behalf of Professor Sorlini and Dr. Carlo Bonizza, the Secretary of Casa della Cultura, with whom we agreed the drafting of my presentation. I'd like to thank the Lombardy region, the councillor. I appreciated his presentation, and I agree on most of what he said. I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Let me confirm my availability to provide our proactive contribution on matters relating to the International Year of Plant Health. Hopefully, our celebrations is a way to develop further and long-lasting cooperations. Thank you very much, Dr. Barozzi. With reference to the last two presentations, since you asked for tangible actions, we're committed to involving your associations, your knowledge base from the environmental setting and from the academy. So we are willing to involve you because this enriches the dealing with these topics, which are ever evolving. And also, we want to have different viewpoints. You referred to balance and rationality in our approaches, which is key. Now, we have the closing speech by Ralph Lopin, which could be the perfect closure of this conference. I will then just formally say goodbye. Let me introduce him. He's the representative of the IPPC FAO steering committee. He was the president of the Ministry of Agriculture of Finland, head of the plant office, and he has major positions in EPO and FAO. For 5 years, he led the proposal, the actions aimed at proclaiming 2020 as the International Year of Plant Health, and he's the president of the International Steering Committee. Now, it's a pleasure for me to hand over to him.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Fine. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. I would like to give you a presentation about the International Year of Plant Health and the legacy of the International Year of Plant Health. I hope you can see my presentation. I have titled my presentation, Keeping Our World Green. And here Professor Mancuso has already taken a little bit the powder out of my gun. Because also from the space, Earth looks blue and white. For us, as land-based mammals, the world is green. And our world is green for the most part. And we have to keep it this way. Before I go into my presentation, I would like to point out, when we talk about plant health and pests, and next slide, please. When we talk about pests, we have a special meaning for that. And I put a number of pictures in here to give you an idea of what pests are. There is a potato beetle, then there is a Phytophthora fungi, and then there's invasive plant species. We also have for instance, what many people consider a pest, the American mink, which is in plant health sense actually not a pest. And we have, for instance, my 3 sons, which I consider quite often a pest, but which in the plant health sense are no pests at all. So if you go to the next slide, you can see what pests are and what pests are not. So go ahead, please, with the slides. Yes. Why do we have an International Year of Plant Health? Because we see, and we have seen in the past 10, 20 years, an unprecedented spread of pests internationally. Not just in Europe, not just in Africa or in the Americas, we have seen it all over. And when you look, for instance, at Italy, with the introduction of Xylella fastidiosa and with, for instance, the brown marmorated stink bug and the Chinese longhorn beetle, Italy has also seen its fair shares of introductions. We also see more and more damages caused by pests. This is partly due to the intensification of our agriculture, but also to some other effects like climate change. And climate change weakens our ecosystems, and it may actually support pests, because in many cases, when you have warming temperatures, trees and other plants get stressed by heat and are then much easier attackable by pests when they infest. Next slide. However, although we have these problems and these increased problems, what we also have seen that actually the public isn't aware of the problem at all. In many cases, the public doesn't know that pests can actually attack plants. We have today so many people who live in cities which are quite disconnected to nature and to plants that they actually don't know what is happening there. For them, plants is a unique mass of green substance. Decision makers also don't know much about pests, and usually what we find is that decision makers very much favor health issues which are connected to tangible objects like animals and of course, like us humans. And that is exactly the same thing for politicians. If you go to the next slide, please. For this reason, Finland and the FAO and the IPPC have worked together to create the International Year of Plant Health, because the International Year of Plant Health is an effort to raise the public and political awareness of plant health, to keep governments and the international community to address these challenges for plant health. That is the intention why we did it. And what do we want to achieve by that? And here I come now to the legacy of plant health. What do we want this International Year to achieve? We want that the public knows about plant health and acts responsibly, for instance, by not distributing pests. We have today many of the pests which are introduced either accidentally on contaminating plant products which move internationally, or sometimes they are introduced by travelers, by tourists, which see a nice plant somewhere in the country, see where they took vacation, they take a clipping, and they try to plant it then at home in their garden. We want that decision makers and politicians understand that that plant health is an important issue and deserves priority. Plants, as it was said beforehand, stand at the base of all life on Earth. And if we do not regard plants properly and do not care about their plant health, we are endangering our own existence. We also want that national plant protection organizations are well funded to undertake their main task, protecting against the introduction of pests. We have seen in many countries in the world that over the recent years or recent decades, the budgets of plant protection organizations have been decreasing. And that, when you consider that international trade has substantially increased over the last 30 years. And what we also would like to see and achieve through the International Year of Plant Health is that plant health research and teaching will be improved, that we have better funding, because that also has gone down over recent years, that funding for plant health related research and teaching has been going down. Now, when we look, what are the concrete achievements we would like to do during this year? It is that the 12th of May is officially recognized as the International Day of Plant Health. We have a study currently in work. Professor Ludovico Golino from the Turin University is the lead author of this study. We would like to have plant health solution to address future challenges that they are investigated and developed. Mr. Montuori from the IPPC Secretariat and the IYPH Secretariat already pointed out that the strategic framework for the IPPC, which has these issues listed. We will have increased funding for plant health research and teaching, and also that plant health will be recognized that it contributes substantially to the prevention of hunger, poverty, and the preservation of our environment. Next slide, please. What we really don't want is pictures like that in the future. Next slide. That our trees, and here you see trees in central Germany, spruce trees, which have died in large quantities in the entirety of the European continent due to the bark beetle, that those trees don't die, that our forests, and please go to the next slide, that our forests will not be dead in 20 years. And here you see large areas in Canada which have been killed by the mountain pine beetle. These are all pine forests, which should usually be green. And what we don't want is that what we see currently in North America taking place, and would you go please to the next slide, that because our forests are dying, we have huge forest fires, which are the direct result of huge areas of forest being attacked by pests and killed by pests, and can be set on fire in an instant through lightning. Please go to the next slide. What we also don't want is that our fruits and vegetables die because of pests, and that the livelihood and our ways of life are irreversibly changed. And here you see olive trees in southern Italy dying because, or dead because of Xylella. And it is not just a plant which can be replaced by another plant. When we kill trees, when we kill plants, what we will have is we will change the environment, we will change traditions, we will change social structures. And the olive tree and the olive production in Italy is a perfect example how social structures and traditions can change when, for instance, a certain crop is destroyed. And please go to the next slide. And we don't want that our plants that our plants and the environment are irreversibly destroyed. Instead, what we really want is to keep our environment pristine by keeping our plants healthy. Coming to the conclusion of my talk, ladies and gentlemen, and here, I would like to make a point that plant health is not just something where we try to protect our own country. The Plant Protection Service of each country should not only protect our own country, we must work globally. Because plant health is an important tool to prevent hunger and to prevent some effects of climate change. And when you look at it, hunger and climate change will impact around the world and cause environmental degradation, wars, economic crisis, and consequently mass migration movements. What we see currently in Africa, ladies and gentlemen, is that because of plant pests, here it is the fall armyworm and also the desert locust, which has seen enormous damages this year. In sub-Saharan Africa, a food insecurity crisis is growing large nowadays. We will have in the future hunger in Africa because of pests and climate change. And the people who live in sub-Saharan Africa, they will not stay in sub-Saharan Africa when there's nothing to eat. They will not stay to die there. They will go somewhere else. And the places where they will go will be the places where there's still food. And that's Europe. And so we may see in the future quite a movement because of climate change, because of hunger, because of plant pests reducing the possibility for people to grow food. We will see mass migration movements which will dwarf everything what we have seen until now. If we do not act globally to get these challenges under control, we will not only be fighting for plant health in Europe, we will protect our own way of life in Europe because of the effects somewhere else. And we have to help to prevent it. And for that, we need to increase the global efforts to improve plant health globally, because that may actually prevent the effects. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Grazie per l'attenzione, and I hope that I was not talking too long.
Grazie.
Thank you very much, Ralph. In your presentation, you perfectly summarized the rationale and contents of the morning session. The last slide actually represents a summary of the commitments ahead of us. The various presentations provided an exhaustive picture, exhaustive as possible, starting from the definition of a scenario that, in our awareness, we know is an unprecedented scenario at the moment. So we need to get ready and raise awareness and to produce strategies. The various speakers provided some of the contents of the initiatives of the International Year of Plant Health. Hopefully, you understand the efforts that are made on various levels to make sure that our plants are healthy. Of course, we need to strengthen and enhance health, teach intelligent reactions. We have to be just as intelligent by taking care of them, by preventing, treating, and managing plants correctly, especially if you use plants for economic purposes. So you need to take a long view going beyond the International Year of Plant Health. It's just a starting point for us, for the coming initiatives, for all of us, not just at Lombardy. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you all for directly contributing to the organization. If you did, thanks to the translators who, worked very hard this morning. And thank you for the thanks to the participants for enriching this initiative. Thank you all and goodbye. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks. Goodbye. Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing and hosting this and inviting